So, while our next speaker needs no introduction the world over, he was in Australia 3 weeks ago. We have the honor of welcoming Dennis Prager to be with here as our distinguished speaker. Dennis, as you all I'm sure know, is one of America's most respected radio talk show hosts. He's been broadcasting in Los Angeles since 1982. It went nationally syndicated in 1999. Airs from his home station of KRLA, as I mentioned, in Los Angeles. He appeared on every conceivable news opinion show, is a best-selling author, and in fact, his recently released book, The Rational Bible, is number 2 on Amazon bestseller list. A Bible commentary, number 2 on Amazon bestseller list. And without any further ado, Dennis Prager.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. The worst thing you could do is stand up before I speak. You have no idea. It's the worst. So I thank all of you who didn't. We took your names, but I do thank you. It's intimidating because I feel I can only disappoint you if you get a standing ovation before you talk. What do you get after you talk? You can't do better. So it's a problem. I'm very touched for so many reasons. And I have so many preliminary comments to make that I hope I get into my talk. First of all, had I been taught the Odyssey like that, I actually would have paid attention. I mean, wow, that really is interesting. That was my first reaction. So that's a very, by the way, in all seriousness, I want to say a word. This is apropos of nothing except for the fact that you're an educational institution, so it's relevant, but it's relevant to everything. The longer I have lived, the more I have realized that the word interesting is more important than people realize. And I often reflect on the fact that in my profession, talk show hosts, they run from left to right, religious, secular, every type. There's only one thing all of us have in common. We're interesting. Otherwise, we lose our job. And I think about that a lot, how important it is to be interesting. One of my passions is classical music, as many of you know. Many of you know me better than I know me. It's a little disconcerting. You see me write with a fountain pen. There it is. We expected that. And I go, oh my God, you're right. You did expect it. And so I even periodically conduct orchestras. And I'm so involved in classical music, so I've asked myself often, for example, I have 36 versions of Bach's Goldberg variations, 36 CDs of it. It's pathetic. My wife laughs when another package comes in. She calls it my porn. It's, Goldberg variations, and then when I listen to Prokofiev, she leaves the room. But so what people ask me often, what is the difference between conductor A and conductor B, or pianist A and pianist B? And in the final analysis, it's interesting. Did the person hold my interest? So no teacher should ever underestimate the importance of being interesting to their students. It is a moral category unto itself. You have to try to be interesting. I remember in school, whether it was elementary, well, I didn't think about this, but in high school and college, and when I had a boring teacher, I remember the question I asked myself: does he know he's boring? No, I really, it was one of these great existential dilemmas for me. And then I put it in the positive way: does he think he's interesting? Is he interesting himself? And I don't know the answer to this day. It's up there with why did God create the mosquito? I have a whole series of questions that I want to ask God, not now, but eventually. By the way, and one more point, I want to thank you, all those of you who brought me cigars tonight. I'm very touched. I walk out, I'm sort of like, it's pathetic that I carry all these cigars with me, but it's fine. I have no dignity when it comes to cigars. But it's a very funny thing because I tweeted today. I don't tweet much. I should tweet more. But I tweeted today at about 3 a.m. your time, because I got in last night. And I had just read something in the Dallas Morning News, and it's about a 111-year-old veteran. The man was born in 1906. He'll be 112 this year. And the story was about him, but near the end of the article, so I was rewarded for reading the whole article, it said he's always asked by interviewers, what's the secret to your longevity? And it said he always answers God and cigars. And I thought, oh, hey, man, that's great. That is great. That is my formula too. It was heartening, and I decided to share it with the world, most of whom think I shouldn't be smoking my cigars, but I don't care. Anyway, I'm so happy to be here. It's interesting because I'm Jewish and I'm a committed Jew, and you're having me at your big fundraiser for your Catholic school, and of course I have two things to say about that. One is this is an ode to America. Because the truth is, it's so healthy, our society, which is one of the reasons I don't like one part of the political spectrum, because they really do malign this spectacularly wonderful society called the United States of America. But see, the ultimate statement of the health of you, of me, and of America is it doesn't matter. Maybe somebody objected to having a religious Jew be the keynote speaker tonight, but I doubt it. But if there is one, it's okay. There's always one. It doesn't matter. No. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I'm dead serious. You and I have virtually everything in common. Of course, we are theologically have differences, but in the final analysis, let God sort that out. But we have so much. Look, let me be as clear as possible. I have more in common with you than with many Jews. You have more in common with me than with many Catholics. That's just the way it is. That is a fact. It's values are values, and that's it. We're God-centered and we're Bible-centered, and we love America and we love what it stands for, and that's what matters in the final analysis. By the way, I do want to thank Father Ames. I would like to compete with him on who's worse at names. I really would. If there was such a competition, I think I would lose or win. I don't know, it depends on the way you measured it. But I wrote his line down, and I will use it from now on. It is a residue of original sin. Where is Father Ames? Where are you, sir? Anyway, okay, so if wherever you are, here, on the way home, wherever you are, thank you. This is, I will use that line. In Jewish life, it may not go over as well as in non-Jewish life, but I don't really care. I think it's just the best. That was spectacular. And Christian, thank you for everything you did to make this possible. You and I know each other so well by now that it'll be a vacation for you not to be hearing from me. But I want to thank you. And to the headmaster, sir, you obviously are loved and respected here for good reason. So it's an honor to be here for your school. I'll have something to say about fundraising at the end, because I'm proud to fundraise for Jewish schools, Catholic schools, Christian schools. You do good work, I'll raise funds for you. And it's as simple as that. I want to talk to you tonight about a very serious subject, and that is the civil wars that are taking place within our religions, within Catholicism, within Protestantism, within Judaism. And this is not meant politically. It has political overtones, but it's not meant politically. And that is this. I have said it's really meant it's meant morally and philosophically. I have said very often, and I mean it quite literally, the most dynamic religion of the last 100 years has not been Christianity, it has not even been Islam, and it's certainly not been my religion, Judaism. It has been leftism. It's not even a critique, it's a description. They have, in terms of influencing the world, we have done nothing comparable in the last 100 years, Judaism or Christianity or Islam for that matter, as much as leftism has. It has conquered the elementary schools, high schools, and universities of the Western world, the media of the Western world, the news media of the Western world, the entertainment media of the Western world, the football games of America. It has conquered just about the late night talk shows. It has now conquered. It has conquered everything. And the most frightening part is its influence in our religions. And this is a very painful area for Catholics today. But it's been painful for me as a Jew my whole life. I am not an Orthodox Jew, I have no axe to grind. Non-Orthodox Judaism has largely become leftism with a Torah scroll, to have a sort of look like it is really Judaism, but it's not. There were rabbis who fasted when Donald Trump was elected. And they how do I know? Because they publicly announced it. And I wrote in the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles, where I had a column for 10 years. I just had to stop to write my Bible commentary. I wrote, that is the worst sin, Chilul Hashem. In Hebrew, Chilul Hashem means desecration of God's name. If you ask a Jew what is the worst sin, Jews have a standard answer across the board, Chilul Hashem, desecrating God's name, using God's name to do what is wrong. By the way, I have a basis for that. It's in the commandment, do not take God's name in vain. In Hebrew is actually do not carry God's name in vain. People have misunderstood it, I think, for 1,000 or 2,000 years. But putting that aside, there were synagogues that sat Shiva, that when an immediate family member dies, you sit Shiva. This Shiva means 7. You sit 7 days and mourn. And there were synagogues that did that when Donald Trump was elected. That crosses lines. I don't care what you think about any president. That just crosses lines that are terrible. It's happening in Catholicism, and it is painful to say to you, and you don't have to agree with me. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be here tonight. But it goes to the Vatican, and it must be terribly painful for a committed Catholic to recognize this. But you have to recognize this. Just to give one frightening example, when Pope Francis was asked on the papal airplane going from the convocation of Catholic youth from around the world, which took place in Poland last year, and he was asked by a member of the French Catholic news agency, who was a believing Catholic, a Holy Father, how come you never criticize Islamic terror? And this was a week after the Catholic priest in France had his throat cut by someone yelling Allahu Akbar. And this was his answer. Why would I condemn that? Do I condemn every baptized Catholic in Italy who kills his girlfriend? You could see the exact quote on the internet. It was recorded. That's mind-blowing. Equating someone who happened to be baptized Catholic, who never killed in the name of the church or Christ, and with somebody, with people in the tens of thousands slaughtering in the name of Islam? How do you compare that? And then the answer is, frankly, liberation theology in Argentina. That's the answer. It's not a puzzle like, why did you invent the mosquito? This has an answer. There's a real answer to this. Liberation theology. We have the same thing with Jews in the Tikkun Olam thing. Repair the world, and therefore every left-wing ideology is great because it repairs the world. There's a synagogue in Pasadena, very close to where I live. I live near Pasadena, and there's a Reform temple there, where the head of Jewish education at a temple is a person who changed from female to male. And it's okay. You make that change. You adopt a male identity, et cetera, et cetera. It's okay. It's not my business. I don't judge you or anything like that. But retained her or his original female name in order, this person said, to push the envelope so that kids think of man and woman as identical. or as non-distinguished in any way. The person's name is Becky. Becky is a female name. It's not Pat or Storm. It's, I don't mean Stormy, I meant Storm. Stormy has a sexual identity. So I want to address the issue of, if you're a Catholic school, are you teaching what needs to be taught? And it's somewhat, I got a lot of chutzpah, I admit it. It's a Jew telling a Catholic school what they should teach. That's the ultimate, I guess, in some ways. But so if you want to take it with a grain of salt, fine, but I think you'll subscribe to a lot of what I say. I remember this was a Protestant, so-called Christian school, came to a talk of mine at the Nixon Museum many years ago. And I don't know how it arose, but I've often mentioned in speeches my question that I ask students: would you save your dog or a stranger first if both were drowning? And a teacher was there with 9-year-old Christian students, and most of the students said they would save their dog. And the teacher was, to his great credit, horrified. And he even said to me, if a Christian school hasn't taught them that man is made in God's image, animals are not, that there's an infinite gulf in preciousness, while clearly we have to never abuse an animal, the human being is of infinite worth. And that's a great dividing line that God has made. And if we haven't taught that, but of course he's not the only one. I spoke in Miami to a major Jewish school there, and I had the same thing. These weren't 9-year-old; they were high school students, and almost half of them voted to save their dog before a stranger at an Orthodox Jewish school in Miami. But I wasn't surprised. That's the reason I asked the question. I wasn't surprised. And I don't know what your kids at your school would answer, but my point is you should be teaching them. If we need to teach kids in religious schools how to deal with the challenges that the radical society into which they will enter will pose. Otherwise, they can memorize Aquinas, and it won't matter. It's great to memorize Aquinas, but it's not enough. So you have to be prepared for the basic challenge to faith that is taking place outside, or they will succumb too. I mean, believe me, I meet enough people whose kids went to Jewish or Christian or Catholic school and who turned out with contempt for religion, not from the school, but from college, because they're taught contempt for religion. Everyone gets an automatic BA in contempt for religion. And it doesn't matter if your major is economics or sociology, let alone gender studies. You will be taught contempt for religion. It is the subtext of all learning from Harvard to UCLA. That is what you are taught, is to regard religious people as morons. And we put out PragerU, Prager University on the internet, 5-minute videos. They're for everybody, but they're particularly for people under 30. 600 million views last year. It's the largest. Thank you. It's the largest conservative advocacy site in the world. And to my great shock, to be honest, if you read my book on happiness, I have no expectations in life, so I'm always shocked by all these good things that happen. Really, it's the truth. It's a wonderful way to go through life, pleasantly surprised every day. We deserve it because we put out good stuff. But you know what gets the most hate, except for one outlier, the consistent. We put out on everything except the natural sciences. We don't presume to teach botany or chemistry. And the ones that get the most hate are not the ones in defending capitalism. They get plenty, or the free market, or conservative principles in other arenas. It's the ones where we argue for God's existence. they get the most hate, and so much so. For example, I did a video. I do only 10% of the videos. So out of the 300, I may have done 30, but 270 are others, thank God. But I tend to concentrate on the more religious themes, and I did one on if there is no God, is murder wrong? And of course the answer is no. If there is no God, murder is no more wrong than eating lima beans. Eating lima beans is a biological act, and so is murder. But the secular world doesn't understand that. They think that there is moral absolutes without God. By the way, every atheist I ever debated, professional atheist philosophers, they agree. If there's no God, ethics are subjective. But the average secular graduate of college doesn't understand that. They think they can have their cake and eat it. They think they can have moral absolutes. Well, it really is objectively wrong to murder, and no God. But all they have is their opinion. That's all they have. It's all opinion. That was so hated that there were tens of thousands of comments, most of which are mock. That's their greatest weapon, mockery. Mock my video. I don't care. I have very thick skin. And but what is amazing is the number of counter videos. People went to the serious expense to make counter videos attacking my video on God and murder. And by the way, Google, owner of YouTube, put it on its restricted list for some months. Which is restricted, the irony is it's restricted to pornography. Pornography and gratuitous violence. Here I am saying God said don't murder, and that's on the same list as murder, as ISIS videos. It's an upside down moral world. You have to prepare the kids for the upside down moral world. You must address these questions so that kids immediately say, of course I love my dog, of course I love my cat. Doesn't matter though, because the divine notion, the God-given notion of man being created in God's image supersedes emotion. And which brings me to a big challenge to all religious institutions today, and that is, in my commentary on the book of Exodus, I think 10 copies here, and hopefully I'll comment on my commentary because it's a very big deal in my life. And that it became, by the way, it became number 2 on Amazon, which is mind-boggling. A Bible commentary, the second best-selling book in America. I mean, this is for Jews the bringing of the Messiah, and for Christians the second coming, all wrapped in one. I mean, this is mind-blowing. Guess what number 1 was? This was like divine. It's about a gay bunny. For the rest of my life, I will be able to answer, really? You were the second best-selling book in America? What was number 1? About a gay bunny. That's mind-blowing. I mean, and I said to my listeners on the air, it's like perfect. It's so perfect. Which will it be, the gay bunny or a commentary on Exodus? And it won. The gay bunny won, by the way. Just for the record, it won. I couldn't supersede it. So here I wrote in my commentary I have 500 pages on Exodus alone, and there's 17,000 words on the 10 Commandments, which is the basic moral law of the universe, in my opinion. And I have a very big list of false gods. Because when it says do not worship false gods, people think, oh, we don't do that anymore. Nobody has a statue of Baal in their house, so it's not an issue. But there are many more false gods today than there were then. And here's a challenge to you, because one of them, I believe, is love. We have exalted love so much so that that's the reason people will save their dog over a stranger. Because they have been taught that love is a God. God may be love, but love isn't a God. And God, by the way, is not only love. God is also judgment. I wish more people had bumper stickers, God is judgment, than God is love. We would have a better society. Do you know that every poll showed that where people believe in a hell, they act better? It makes perfect sense. If you think you'll be punished for bad deeds, maybe you'll do fewer bad deeds. This is called common sense, right? This is not, you don't need a PhD in theology to think that way. Oh, I might get punished, maybe I'll rethink it. That's it. It's a pretty good idea. Love has become by far, it's become too important. My favorite verse in the Bible is from Psalms. Those of you who love God, hate evil. It's a command. We don't have a command form in English verbs, but in Hebrew it is. I know biblical Hebrew very well. And we have Israelis here, correct? Sin'u is correct? Is command form. Sin'u, Ohavei Adonai sin'u ra. Those of you who love God, you must hate evil. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. That should be taught in a Catholic school. That should be emphasized. These are very important words from God's word, the Bible. It's if we take it seriously, we got to take the whole thing seriously, and that's part of it. Love is very important, but love can be. Look, Nazis loved Germany. Love in and of itself is amoral. Love is not a moral category in and of itself, just like the love of the animal. The People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals have a program. You could look this up. The biggest animal rights group on earth. They have a program called Holocaust on Your Plate. And you know what it is? Some of you I see from shaking your heads can figure it out. This is the official line of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And that is that the barbecuing of chickens in America is the moral equivalent to the cremating of the Jews in Auschwitz. Wow. They're all college educated. You have to be college educated to be that stupid. It is, no, I mean it. No, this is, you can laugh, but I mean it seriously. No eighth grader thinks that barbecuing chickens and barbecuing people is morally similar. You have to go to college to become such a moral idiot. And that's their position. These are the things we have to in religious schools. If we don't got to teach them how to fight, and we have to teach them what to fight. It's not enough. The great curricula of Jewish and Christian schools are great, but they're not enough. We have to know what they are up against when they leave our school, or it will be for naught. It will be even a pleasant memory, my Catholic school or my Jewish school or my Christian school. But I don't want them to have pleasant memories. I want them to have good values. And I want them to know that they have to go out and fight. You have to hate evil. You don't have to hate everybody, but you have to hate evil. If you don't hate murder or rape and torture, there's something wrong with you. It just is. It was something morally wrong. We have to teach them that America is a Judeo-Christian country. It was founded to have a secular government and a religious society, otherwise we will not succeed. Every founder said that. George Washington, in his farewell address, said that. Religion is the prop for morality without which we cannot have a society. John Adams, same thing about we will only be able to sustain America with a religious people. They all said it. Not all of them were Christian in the Trinitarian sense, but they were all God-centered. Even the two least formally religious, Franklin and Jefferson, you know that they had a design for the Great Seal of the United States? You could see this on the internet. They actually had it designed. I wish it had been adopted, but it wasn't. And it was the Jews leaving Egypt. That is how Bible-centered Jefferson and Franklin were. And their analogy was perfect. Just as the Israelites left Egypt, we left Europe. The left wants to bring us back to Europe. In a nutshell, that is exactly the civil war we are in. Do we remain American or do we return to Europe? Is it the French Revolution or the American Revolution you wish to emulate? That's it. This is what the kids need to be equipped with. And then I'll give you one more thing. I want to have time for questions, and I want to say a few other words, but this is a very important thing to teach our religious kids. And again, it's across the board. If it's Protestant, Catholic, or Jewish, it doesn't matter, or Mormon for that matter. It doesn't matter. These are all acceptable and mainstream. I have a fun question. It was played on me, and I didn't get it right. So if you don't get it right, don't feel bad. Neither did I the first time. What did God create on the second day? And almost nobody gets the answer. God just made separations on the second day. The word for separate in Hebrew, one of the words for separate in biblical Hebrew, is the same word as the word for holy. Kadosh means separate, distinct, and holy. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, which is really the pillar upon which both testaments stand, and Jesus would agree with me on that one, I have no doubt. The Torah is a book of distinctions. Distinctions are the essence of order. God made the universe, God made this world with distinctions. The light and dark and the land and the water are the obvious ones. But I want to give you 4 or 5 that need to be taught to kids in every religious school. Then they will have a chance to fight the great fight that they will have to fight against the radicalization and the radical secularization of our society. One is God-man. What happens if you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? What happens? Why does the serpent say you will become like God? Right? That's what the serpent offers. Because whoever determines good and evil is God. That is the determiner of that is God. Either God is the determiner of good and evil, or man is the determiner of good and evil. If we are the determiners of good and evil, we are gods. That's my way of understanding that sequence in the Garden of Eden, and it is indeed what it is. The Nazis determined good and evil in their way. The communists determined it in their way. Marx, as Marx put it, man is God and God is man. And that's exactly right. We have usurped God. We are now the determiners because opinion is all that matters. There are no absolutes. So the man-God distinction is one distinction. Man-animal distinction. The left is destroying every distinction that the Bible has brought forth. That's the key to understand. In a nutshell, the battle between the religious world and the leftist world is over distinctions. They want all distinctions abolished, except ironically racial, which is a distinction we don't believe in, because we don't know if Adam was black or white or yellow or red, and we don't care. That's the whole point. If you're a religious person, you don't care about color. God has no color, Adam has no color, Noah has no color, color doesn't matter. But that's not what they're taught. That they're taught does matter, but that's another subject. The man-animal distinction is the second one, the human-animal distinction. That's why I taught you it's being obliterated. Barbecuing chickens is the same as the cremating of the Jews in the Holocaust. And I ask high school kids, so who would you save, your dog or a stranger? So I started doing this in my 20s. I'm in my 60s. That's 40 years of asking the same question, the same results for 40 years. Excuse me. 1/3 vote for the dog, 1/3 vote for the stranger, and 1/3 doesn't know. It's just consistent. It's a third, because I allow them not to know. They don't have to vote. They can be totally stymied by the complexity of the question. And when I ask them, why would you save your dog? I've gotten the same answer for 40-something years. I love my dog. I don't love the stranger. That's it. That's that. What else do you need to know? The notion that man is created in God's image and animals are not, it's never been taught to them, or if it was never taught with application. If you teach a principle but don't apply it, you might as well not teach the principle. Principles need to be applied to real life. Yes, we are infinitely more valuable than animals. That doesn't mean that you can walk around and torture an animal. The Torah is filled with bans on maltreatment of animals. You can't muzzle an ox while it grazes in the field. It has to be free to eat. Your animal, people don't think about this. I obviously have. I've devoted my life to teaching these first 5 books. And in the 10 Commandments, you know that animals are in the 10 Commandments? Nobody thinks that way. Your animal has to rest on the Sabbath. What book ever said animals have to rest a day of the week? And please, preceding the Bible, the concept would have been laughed at by pagans. I have a moral duty to my animal? What are you, out of your mind? I don't even have a moral duty to most human beings. Forget animals. The man-animal distinction is another huge divinely ordained distinction. And if you remove the divine, you get no distinctions. That's exactly what has happened. By the way, I ask, it's really amazing, you'll be frightened to actually hear this. So I asked them, okay, so you love your dog. What if somebody said they loved their hamster and they saved a hamster before a person? No problem. What if they had a pet insect? I mean, I know it sounds absurd to you, but I want them to realize, isn't there a level of absurdity that you would acknowledge? If they love their insect, we can't judge. And by the way, I do another question. I ask the ones who vote to save the stranger, would you say that your fellow students who voted to save the dog are wrong? Never. Never. Even the guys and girls on our side don't vote on that one. Even they believe it's just my opinion. Well, I personally would save the stranger. Not God demands I save the stranger. My favorite, of course, is when some kid gets up and I could tell within 12 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, what he's going to ask, and he's very smug, or she is smug, usually a guy, and that they're going to catch me. And so they say, well, Mr. Prager, what if the person drowning were Hitler? Like I hadn't thought of that or been asked that for 44 years. I'm tempted to one day go, that is one great question. I don't know what to say. Why didn't I think of that? So then I tell them, well, here's the story. If Hitler is drowning, it's irrelevant if a dog is drowning. I will help him drown. And that is the answer. If Hitler dies, millions live. What is the issue here? I don't care. If Hitler and a leaf are drowning, I save the leaf. So that ends that question. But that they always think that there's some great answer. By the way, of course, they've changed the question because I said stranger purposely, right? I didn't say, a mass murderer. That's not the question. So that's the second distinction. First, God, man, animal, God, nature. The awesomeness of Genesis, the awesome, world-changing notion of Genesis 1 is that God created nature. There was no such idea anywhere on earth prior to the Bible. Nowhere. The gods were gods of nature. The God of rain, the God of snow, or the God of wind, the God of earthquakes, the God of this, they were all in nature. The God of Genesis says, let there be. That's it. There's light because I made light. There's a sun because I made the sun. The chief god of Egypt was the sun. Ra was the sun. In the Bible, the sun is nothing. In fact, shamash means what? Servant. What's the Hebrew word for son?
Shemesh.
Thank you. The word for son is servant. He's the servant of God. He isn't God. It's a radical, I'll tell you another radical thing about Genesis 1. God is completely desexualized. There is no such notion anywhere in the pagan world of a desexualized God. By the way, the reason I believe it's divine text is there's no explanation why people would have come up with things that are this new. I have many arguments for why I believe it's divine text. That's the reason I'm animated to write these commentaries to begin with, to show how great it is. But this is a big one, God and nature. We are returning to pre-biblical worship of nature. Mother Earth, Gaia, right? Gaia, the goddess of Earth, Mother Earth. The radical environmentalists, which is almost redundant, the radical environmentalists really do believe we humans are a nuisance. The nature left, the environment left without us is better. It's better off. The biblical view is that it was created for us. Not to abuse, I fully acknowledge, but to rule over. It does say have dominion, and there's a reason. Either we rule over nature or nature rules over us. If you take chemotherapy for cancer, you are ruling over nature. That's the way it should be. Nobody living in nature romanticizes nature. It's urban dwelling PhD candidates who romanticize nature. You remember when that poor dentist killed that lion in Africa? The guy had to flee for his life. His life was ruined for killing a lion with a tag on it. And there was an article, I was shocked the New York Times printed it, but it did, to its credit, by a guy from Africa living in the United States, said, I don't know what the hell you in America talking about. The lion is our enemy in Africa. You who never lived to see people torn apart by lions, you're just preoccupied with saving lions. We're not. We're preoccupied with saving humans against lions. Next distinction that has been obliterated, the holy and the profane. There is, in secular society, you can't have the holy because secular doesn't allow for holy. Holy means that it comes from God or it is elevated toward God. That's what holy means. My definition of holy is the elevation from animal-like to God-like. If you eat with your face in a bowl, it's not eating holy. It's eating, why? Because you're eating like an animal. So there's animal here and there's God here. We have both parts of us in us, and the more godly, the more holy, the more animal, the more ungodly. That's just the way it works. And that's why I consider public cursing to be a big issue. I am not as strict on private. If you talk to your wife and you tell an off-color joke, I don't have an issue with you, but you may, and I respect that. But public cursing is a very huge deal to me. And it is a non-issue in American life. It has become a non-issue to curse on television, on radio, in public. The mayor of Los Angeles, after the Los Angeles Kings won the Stanley Cup a few years ago, I'm a hockey fan, so I follow this. Forgive me, Flyers fans, I root for the Kings. You probably never met a Kings fan in your lives, actually. Here I am. I prefer the King of Kings, but nevertheless, but the LA Kings in the meantime. Anyway, when the Kings won the Stanley Cup, he got up, the mayor of Los Angeles. He's still the mayor. And he got up in Staples Center where they play, where they had the 16,000 people and God knows 100,000 watching on TV, many of them kids. And he stood there with a beer, and he said, I'm going to do the two things they tell you a politician you shouldn't be doing in front of people and in front of kids, but I will. And he puts his beer out and he goes, this is an effing great day for Los Angeles. But he didn't say effing, he said the word. So it came out as an expletive because the piano fell on his toe. It was that he was proud to say he was cursing in front of kids. And for that matter, in front of adults. But why wouldn't he? He's purely secular. He doesn't have a concept of holy and profane. It doesn't exist. Religious kids need to be taught the difference between holy and profane. San Francisco had a debate last year whether or not they would maintain laws against public nudity. Can you walk around San Francisco naked? And the vote went 12-11 to retain the ban. So it'll be removed in a year or two. 12-11 is great by one vote. So I noted to my radio audience that there is no secular argument against public nudity. And I said, I'm going to spend an hour here. Call me up if you have a non-religious argument against people walking around naked in public. There is none. So as we become more secular, there will be more public nudity. God fashions the first clothing. The first thing God does after they eat of the tree of knowledge is give them covering for their genitalia. It's a very powerful statement. The argument against public nudity is not a sexual argument, it's a holiness argument. And that is, we're not animals. Animals walk around naked, people don't. We're not animals. That's the argument. We have to prepare religious kids to make this argument. There is no secular argument against walking around naked. None. Not a health argument, no argument. And indeed, at the most radically secular city, San Francisco, will in fact, I am sure within a year or two, simply allow people to walk around naked. I hope they do in a certain sense, because there will be some people who will decide this is too much. I mean, at a certain point, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is no point where even secular people will say, wait a minute, this is too much. I don't know if it will happen. But part of me is rooting for it only in that sense. I'm not aching to see public nudity. But it's the question is, will it shake people up? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. But just remember, just as there's no religious argument to save a stranger before the dog you love. When you get rid of God, you get rid of all these arguments. My life has been dedicated to teaching the consequences of the death of God, the consequences of secularization. I spend almost no time arguing for God's existence. Of course I believe in God's existence, but I spend almost no time arguing for God's existence. I spend all my time arguing the consequences of God's non-existence. Which is going to be, by the way, I'm going to speak at Columbia tomorrow. And your reaction is right. And you know what? It's very interesting. You know what they asked me to speak on? This is a very interesting. I mean, obviously, it's conservatives who asked me to speak. The Columbia Republicans, all three of them. And there are actually, believe it or not, I think there are 80 who would admit to it. And but anyway, they asked me to speak. I have an article up on the internet. I wrote this many years ago in my syndicated column, How I Found God at Columbia. Which I did. I mean, I was raised with God, obviously, but as an adult, I found God in Columbia. And I'll tell you exactly how. Which is what, but before I do, I just want you to understand, it's interesting, that's what they asked me, that's what the college Republicans, not college Christians or college Jews, college Republicans asked me to speak on a religious subject. So I think the very youngest of the millennials are starting to become aware that life is empty without this. They don't know why. They don't know why there's this darkness, but at least there's a semblance of realization that there is a darkness that they're living in. So my article is very simple, and it literally is how it happened. It was a graduate school at Columbia, and I was walking on the campus, and I was very lonely. I mean, I wasn't lonely. I was alone at Columbia. I wasn't lonely because I had friends, but I was totally alone. I felt one kid was a kindred spirit. Otherwise, I felt like I was an extraterrestrial. It was just like today, kids taking over deans' offices, riots, spelling America with a K, calling it fascist. Nothing's changed. It's gotten worse. But it was bad then. But the thing that drove me craziest was I was being taught by very bright people stupid things. Bright people were teaching me that men and women were basically the same. I knew that they weren't basically the same. I knew it because I guess I didn't allow myself to be brainwashed by college, because everybody knows they're not the same. unless you go to college in the Western world. We're profoundly different. And I thought, why am I being taught nonsense? And then why was I being taught? I was at the School of International Affairs. I specialized in communist affairs. And I was being taught by all my professors that America and the Soviet Union were equally responsible for the Cold War. I thought, you got to be kidding. Truman is as responsible as Stalin? That's when it started. That's an absurdity. A totalitarian, genocidal state is responsible, is no more responsible for the Cold War than free America. By the way, I had the same thing happen in Oxford, where I debated a couple of years ago, where the debate was who was more responsible, who was more of an obstacle to Middle East peace, Hamas or Israel? This was an actual debate. Is that mind-blowing? A police genocidal state versus an open society, who's more responsible as an obstacle to peace? So you live through this stuff. So anyway, I'm at Columbia, and I can't, why am I being taught this by these professors? And then I give you my word, all of a sudden a phrase that I had said in the morning prayers in yeshiva, religious Jewish school, from first grade on, came to my brain out of nowhere, and it changed my life. It wasn't a theophany. God didn't appear to me, but it was an epiphany. This was a life-changing moment realization, and I kept the phrase came to my mind. Reshit chachma yirat Adonai. Wisdom begins with fear of God, from the Bible, and that was one of the revelatory moments of my life. The reason there's no wisdom at Columbia is there is no God at Columbia. No God, no wisdom. You have brains, you have knowledge, but you don't have wisdom. There is no wisdom at our universities. They're wisdom-free zones. That's what they are. It's exactly what I say this all the time. I think that a lot of people become stupider when they go to college. That they thought more clearly when they were in 9th grade than they did after they graduated college. Ask a 6-year-old, are boys and girls different? Unless they're being raised in college-educated parents' homes. No, this which brings me to my next and most important. The war, and this is how I'll end with, against distinctions is now, and I predicted this 25 years ago in print, but its virulence is even shocking to me. The war against the male-female difference. God created Adam. God created Adam, that is the human being. Zachar u'nekeva bara otam. Male and female, he created them. God made the distinction between male and female. There is an attempt to undo all distinctions. By the way, by undoing all distinctions, you're undoing the belief that God is the ultimate orderer of the universe. And I am convinced that at the heart of it, even though it's not conscious on their part, it is an attempt to overturn the notion of a God-ordered universe. So your kids have to be taught this, that there is a male-female distinction, and it is God himself who made it. And I'm not talking about the handful, the tiny, tiny number of people who have gender dysphoria, that they identify with the sex that they are not biologically. My heart goes out to these people. I can't think of many conditions, psychological conditions, that are more painful to imagine than that. My heart goes out to them. That's not the issue. The issue is the obliteration of the male-female distinction, or as they now say, it is not binary. Gender is not binary, but it is binary. You're either male or female. That's it. But not if you apply to Facebook. There are now 56 categories under gender. Is it 96? It's up to 96? You serious? Okay, why not? If there's, hey, do I hear 106? I believe it is child abuse. The number of parents now raising their kids with no gender identity is increasing exponentially. They give them names. That's the name Storm. That was the name given in the New York Times article that I was reading on air. Storm is not male or female. And they don't, of course, blue, and if you believe in blue and pink, of course, Target no longer has blue and pink. It'll go out of business because the left will shut them down as transphobic. These are very serious issues. The fate of civilization as we know it lies in the balance. And there is no other audience than the religious Christian or Jewish audience that I can appeal to save it, if we can. But these are the things that I believe need to be taught to your kids, along with all the other wonderful things that are obviously taught, like the Odyssey. But they need to be told that you're going into battle after school here. And it's our job to prepare you. And just know that if God is removed from the equation, nothing is left. You can't say murder is wrong, and you'll equate cremated Jews with barbecue chickens. Thank you very much. Thank you.